Hey, good evening. This is going to be a pretty decent sized video, I want to say, for a 4-minute clip of Alex Jones from Infowars. Alex Jones, the host of Infowars, who continues to mislead in his reporting, and to his unfortunate audience who has pretty much general ignorance regarding the specific news clip that he's talking about, which is the collapse of World Trade Center 7. So Jones spoke about a number of issues in his 4-minute, 30-second clip. He speaks on Israeli intelligence and the fire department being involved in a cover-up regarding the collapse of World Trade Center 7 on September 11, 2001. Jones, throughout the video, indirectly asserts that members of the Israeli Mossad and the fire department, the New York Fire Department, were involved with the implosion of the building, and he uses edited audio clips, which doesn't even refer to any of the statements that he makes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play the video uninterrupted. And then after when that's done, I'm going to construct an argument for the pros and cons of what happened at World Trade Center 7 on September 11, 2001, using only primary source material, including transcripts of members of the fire department who were inside World Trade Center 7 from a court docket regarding a civil suit case brought on by the tenants of World Trade Center 7 against Larry Silverstein. And also, I'm going to be using video snippets as well regarding news clips, and also from documentaries regarding about certain issues about World Trade Center 7. And so without further ado, here is the video.
So there's a lot of these compilations out there, and I came across one today that just shows some of the local newscasts and the police and firefighters saying they were given the order to get back from Building 7, the 47-story FBI CIA headquarters, the second largest FBI CIA substation in the United States, in the world. And that day, I remember at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd been on air since the morning. I drove down the street like a mile to a pizza place to get a pizza. And I'm driving back, and they had CBS radio still on the air then on KLBJ 590. And I heard CBS News report that they were going to blow up Building 7 in about 15 minutes to save the other buildings. Well, it takes days to plant explosives in a building, folks, if not weeks. But back then, things weren't archived to the internet. But years later, things got archived once there was enough bandwidth, enough compression, enough servers. So about 5 years after 9/11, all these videos got put online. And the audio, the newscast, and the rest of it, CBS, NBC, CNN, BBC. And then later they said, no, we never said that. It's a conspiracy theory. Well, here's a compilation of some of those, and also the dancing Israelis that got arrested across the water in New Jersey, jumping up and down, that were videotaping it. And I'm not saying Israel did 9/11, but the way the globalists work is they get multiple intelligence agencies involved, just like Epstein was Mossad, MI6, and CIA. I do believe elements of Israeli government were involved in 9/11, and it's come out that Israel's helped fund Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So is our government. So there's also a few clips of that. So here's that short compilation.
The fire department, and they did use the word, we're going to have to bring it down.
We heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. It looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out. About a second later, the bottom floor caved out. The building followed after that, and we saw the building crash down all the way to the ground.
And I turned in time to see what looked like a skyscraper implosion. It looked like it had been done by a demolition crew. The whole thing just collapsing down on itself.
Okay, hit pause for a moment. Coming up is Larry Silverstein from a PBS documentary that aired 2 years after 9/11, saying they gave the order to pull it and watch the building come down. Pull it means controlled demolition, but hear it for yourself.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. It just pancaked.
There
remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Pause again. So this is one of those type situations where the CDC in October 2000 put out a document months before the shots began saying it'll cause blood clots, myocarditis, strokes, you know, dozens of other horrible things, infertility, and it was all true and they knew. And they want to just act like that's not there. Same thing with this. I interviewed the firefighters and police that heard the countdown and were told that the building was about to be brought down by the feds. And then we interviewed the deputy head of New York Emergency Management, Barry Jennings, who mysteriously died after we interviewed him. But we talked to the neighbors. They said there was all these vans and feds there and that they moved out of the house before he was announced dead. So probably witness relocation program. But who knows? He may have actually died. We don't know. We're allowed to speculate here. But that's how deep I investigated this, okay? Went to New York dozens of times, covered it. So I talked to the eyewitnesses, not just the clips. Now, here's where the Israelis come in.
Since September 11th, more than 60 Israelis have been arrested or detained, either under the new Patriot anti-terrorism law or for immigration violations. A handful of active Israeli military were among those detained, according to investigators, who say some of the detainees also failed polygraph questions when asked about alleged surveillance activities against and in the United States. Numerous classified documents obtained by Fox News indicate that even prior to September 11th, as many as 140 other Israelis had been detained or arrested in a secretive and sprawling investigation into suspected espionage by Israelis in the United States. The majority of those questioned, quote, stated they served in military intelligence, electronic surveillance intercept, and or explosive ordnance units.
So there you have it. I mean, that's the whole video, and that's what I want to talk about. So what I want to do is I'm going to reconstruct his arguments and then critique them in order. And one of them, right off the bat, was the Israeli intelligence link. Now, Jones basically says that I'm not implicating that Israel did 9/11, yet he hints right at it throughout the 4-minute, 30-second video. What evidence did Jones make here connecting them to World Trade Center 7? Actually, the dancing Israelis were actually at a parking lot adjacent to the river. They were in Doric Towers, which is actually a tall high-rise building in Jersey City, New Jersey. And they were actually celebrating the attack of World Trade Center 1. There's actually FBI interviews of the residents that day that said that they saw a white van that they were driving at 8 a.m. Now, whether that was their truck or not, it's not really known, but that's something to think about. Nevertheless, how in the heck did Alex Jones make that jump to suggest that the Israeli Mossad were involved with the implosion of World Trade Center 7, which he hints throughout this video? He never made this jump. So what he's actually doing here is actually insinuating through implying that the Israeli Mossad, because they were seen celebrating the attacks and that they were a covert unit, they somehow had to have been linked to the implosion of World Trade Center 7. So he makes a lot of assumptions here. I'm not saying that Israel didn't have any involvement with the 9/11 attacks, but it's much different than what Jones is insinuating here. Jones actually is being very coy as well in his insinuations. There's not everything he said is wrong, but he actually mixes truth with speculation, and you just can't do that. You have to be far more careful about using speculation. Whenever I do it, I try to report in the video I'm making and say to the person, hey, listen, what I'm going to say next is speculation. And then whenever I insinuate regarding information, I try to use primary source material in every video I try to make. And I hope in the fact that you, the viewer, are doing your homework and reporting or doing your due diligence in investigating information, whether it's true or not, what I'm saying to you. So there's a two-way street here. I'm giving information, and I'm hoping that you are looking at the information to see if it's true or not. It takes a little time, but that's what I'm hoping for. But Jones just basically jumps right off the bat and says, oh, World Trade Center 7 was imploded, and the Israeli Mossad is basically involved because they were seen celebrating attacks. You just can't make that jump. You have to show primary source material, evidence showing that the dancing Israelis, in this case, 5 men, Sivan and Paul Kurzberg, Omar Mamary, Yaron Shmuel, and Oded Nelner. Those are the 5 dancing Israelis. They were called the high fivers by the FBI, dancing Israelis by the media. But you have to show that they were involved with the implosion of World Trade Center 7. Did he show that in his video? No. So now to the next point. So Jones basically states that the fire department, the New York Fire Department, claims that they were knowledgeable or had foreknowledge about the implosion of World Trade Center 7. In fact, Jones claimed he had audio transcripts, proof that the fire department knew that World Trade Center 7 was being imploded, and yet plays one single third-hand testimony. We don't know who that woman is. Never gives her name. Jones never shows who this person is. Well, it could have been anybody who makes the same claim as him, that she heard a countdown. Now, a countdown doesn't mean that the fire department had foreknowledge that the building was going to be imploded. He also plays news clips not even related to the claim he's making. The news clips are basically saying, it looks like a building that's imploded. Well, if you look at it, sure, it looks that way, but knowing and believing are 2 different things. So what I want to do next is basically read from a number of firsthand testimony of the fire department in regards to a civil suit case that took place in 2003. I'm sorry, 2004. And this was actually a civil suit case that I talked about previously regarding Aegis Insurance, Liberty Insurance Underwriters, the National Union Insurance Company of Pittsburgh, the New Jersey Clear Electric Insurance Limited, and certain underwriters at Lloyd's, and of course, Consolidated Edison Company. This is the Aegis civil suit case, Con Ed versus World Trade Center 7. This court case took, the filing began in 2004, and the case ended in 2011. And for more about it, the background is that during the September 11 attacks on the World Trade Center 7, the World Trade Center building was damaged by flaming debris when the North Tower collapsed. And the New York Fire Department established a collapse zone, walked away from the building at midday rather than fight the fire caused by the debris because the water lines were disrupted. The building eventually collapsed, destroying the electrical substation owned by Consolidated Edison directly underneath the building. The plaintiffs sued the defendants, alleging negligent design caused the building to collapse. The ruling in 2011 from Judge Pooler basically said in the Second Circuit, Southern District of New York, basically said that the court held that assuming a genuine negligence on part of the defendants was not the cause for the collapse of World Trade Center 7. And that the court held that although the risk of massive fire at a high rise was a foreseeable risk, dismissal was properly granted in a negligence suit regarding the collapse of a particular building against defendants, the entities that designed, built, operated, and maintained the building, because given the unprecedented nature and magnitude of the constellation of events from September 11th, any alleged negligence on the part of the defendants was not the cause, in fact, of this building's collapse. So from here on, what I want to do is basically show you the fire department, the fire chiefs testimony about what they saw on World Trade Center 7, the damages, the fires, the inward damage, the outward damage to the building, and whether or not they experienced bombs going off or explosions. So in this case, let's read from Anthony Varil, who is a fired of who was involved with the World Trade Center 7 building. He was inside the building, and in this case, he's being asked by the lawyers in the case. I would like to ask you a few more questions about your observance of the southwest corner of the building. You estimated, I believe, 10 to 15 floors of damage. Do you have an estimate for? I'm sorry. And Barry basically says the 10 to 15 floors I'm talking, it appeared that the corner I-beam was missing and that there was more floors that had damage throughout the front facade of the building, and several floors were completely exposed. The things that stood out, the I-beams were gone, the vertical I-beams. Here is Barry Brandis, who is a testimony in the Aegis case, says, so I grabbed Terry first on the side and I said, Terry, do me a favor, just listen. I didn't say anything. I said, just listen. And then after a minute or so, or whatever I said to him, I said, Terry, do you hear it? He says, yes, I do. Terry, this building is coming down, he said. You are probably right. And then Jimmy's like, rough and tough, Brooklyn guy, blah, blah, blah. He said to get Jimmy involved. Jimmy, do me a favor, don't say anything. It was hard for him not to say anything. I asked him not to say anything and just listen. He admitted that he heard it also. And I said, the building is coming down. The building is definitely coming down, right? I'll play that later. Chief Chris Boyle. Was it from that hole? It was from that hole, and that's when I called to the other guys across the street. I said, I wouldn't stay there if I was you. There's stuff coming down out of there. How many floors was the hole, the gouge about? Probably about 5 stories. It was a good gouge. Was it more towards one side of the building, more towards the center of the building? I think it was toward the center of the building. I'm going to show you a depiction of the south side, and I'm going to ask you if you could draw on what you saw. Sure. I may ask you to draw a couple more questions before I can draw. Chief Boyle, before you draw for me, could you tell from your view whether it looked like it was something that had been a gouge that had been caused by something from the inside or from the outside? Mr. Levy objects. You can answer. I couldn't tell you that, but it looked like something hit the building. What shape was it? It looked like the hull of a ship, the hull of a boat, just kind of like that. More vertical than horizontal? Yes. What can you recall about the fires that you saw on the north side of the World Trade Center 7? Now, this is Chief Daniel Negro. At the time, I don't know. At various times in the day, I would say that there was more fire in that building than I have seen in my career in a high-rise building other than, of course, 1 and 2 World Trade Center, which would have been fantastic to see on any other day. On that day, it didn't seem that fantastic anymore because we already seen more. But certainly there was considerable fire in various locations, which was unusual to have. Under normal conditions, a fire starts at one floor and works its way up. And you might have a few floors of fire if the fire department can't get a handle on it. It is rare that you see fires on non-continuous floors, meaning that there were floors of fire that weren't continuous. There were separate areas of fire and separate floors. He goes on to say, who convened a meeting that was held at 2 o'clock? I did. Did you request that certain chief officers be present? I think we in the fire department, we have the staff chiefs, which are the highest ranking members of the department. The ones that the surviving members that were there, I think, was able to bring them all to the meeting. It was Chief Frank Carruthers, Mike Butler, Harry Myers, and these are all chiefs who weren't at the scene at the initial collapse, but made their way there afterwards. Myself, Chief Turi, our chief of safety and Frank Fellini might have attended. I don't know if he left the operations post or not, but it is possible. One of the purposes of the meeting was to talk about World Trade Center 7. Yes. Did you know whether you had this conversation at the 2 p.m. meeting? There were firefighters present at the World Trade Center 7 again at that time. I don't know. There might have been because there were no orders given not to be. So it's quite possible. Was it during this meeting that you decided that a collapse zone be established around World Trade Center 7? Yes. Do you recall whether there was one overriding factor that caused you to decide to establish the collapse zone around World Trade Center 7? I think it was more the three-headed reason: the absence of people in the building, the fires, and the damage. I don't know if anyone would have been enough to make the decision after convening the 2 p.m. meeting, making the conclusion about the establishing the collapse zone around World Trade Center 7. What did you do next? Well, I recall that we went back to the operations post to tell everyone what we were doing, to get all the chief officers that we could there to, and people from the other agencies who had people committed to the area, like the police department, Port Authority, and tell them that the plan was, and this is what was happening. Did you personally go to the operations post at the time to give that order? Yes, I did. So according to Chief Daniel Negro, he told members of the Port Authority, the police department, and the FBI probably, that they were going to establish a perimeter collapse zone at 2 p.m. Here's Frank Carruthers, Chief Frank Carruthers, right? Was a determination also made to cease any firefighting efforts at the building? We were pulling everybody out of an area 360 degrees around, large enough for a 50-story building to fall in any direction. Since we couldn't really predict which direction it might fall. So that would include taking firefighting or firefighting units and abilities away from the building. Do you know whether there was actually any firefighters in the building at the time the decision was made? I don't remember that right now. But was it the plan that if there were, they were pulled out of the building at that point? Once we made the decision when we created a collapse zone, everyone is taking out of it. So that means nobody was in World Trade Center 7 when the collapse zone was established. Making the decision, it was basically a bottom-up decision. They made the first-hand observations and expressed their concerns and reservations and passed them up the line. Some of them I knew personally, although at this point, I really can't remember exactly who was there, but their observations and concerns weighed heavily. Was it your recollection in terms of the fires in the building? Frank Carruthers says, I really don't have a separate specific memory of fires. There were fires in all of these buildings. But you knew from your direction with the others that there were fires inside, and that decision was already made. There were a lot of others that still needed to be made. You also testified earlier that besides the damage to the corners of the building, there was other damage to the building. Did you personally observe that, or was that information received from the others? And objections to it. What I was talking about was obvious impact to the front of the building that I observed. Can you be more specific? What did you actually see that was obvious? Objection. A building that looked like it was bombarded with large, heavy objects. Again, no mention of any explosions. No mention of seeing any bombs so far. We'll keep going. Here's Chief Peter Hayden. What I saw was what viewed to me was a bulge in the southwest corner of World Trade Center 7, somewhere between the 7th and 12th floors. Heavy fire condition on several floors of World Trade Center 7. Could you tell whether the bulge extended past a corner either south or west from where you were located? I couldn't tell. When you made the observation, did you observe damage to the southwest corner of the building too? Well, a bulge in the corner of the building would be described as damage in my view. Did that result in the creation of a collapse zone around World Trade Center 7? Yes. Did you know when that was created? I think shortly after we discussed the structural ability of the building and other discussions we had subsequent to that, we decided to establish a collapse zone. What were the discussions regarding the structural stability of the building? Well, what we were worried about is collapse at some point in time. We had a discussion with a gentleman who identified himself as an engineer. We posed to him that the question, considering the structural damage that was obvious to the building on the southwest corner and the amount of fire damage that was occurring within the building, could we anticipate a collapse of the building? Would it collapse? And if so, when? He said yes. And he gave an approximate time of about 5 to 6 hours, which was pretty much right on the money because the building collapsed about 5 o'clock that afternoon. After the discussion, the transit was set up, of course, and we established collapse zones were established. That would mean that Jones, when he insinuates that he heard a countdown, was referring to the countdown regarding the collapse of the building. Nothing about setting up bombs in the building. You're reading the transcripts right here of the firemen involved, in which Jones is saying, we're involved with the implosion of the building. Do you recall who the engineer was? No, I don't recall. Do you know who he was affiliated with? I don't recall. I'll play that later. Now, this is Lieutenant Joe Miola. And what observation did you make as the day went on? Miola, the fire was increasing in the front side of World Trade Center number 7. Did you see any damage to the building either on the south or west face? It was hard to see damage. There was damage there, but it was tough to see because of the smoke. There was also heavy smoke in front of the building. So above the pile of the debris field, all you seen was heavy smoke. But could I see actual damage to the building? I remember it being collapsed into, through the smoke, but I couldn't tell you. I'm not an engineer to tell you what type of damage. And so that's all the testimony that you read. Now, at no point did you see firefighters mentioning any explosions throughout their testimonies. You didn't read the fire department setting up shape charges or explosives to bring the building down. So Jones's claim is refuted here. Now, let's talk about the pull it term. Larry Silverstein, who owns World Trade Center 7, that's the only building he owned. He rented 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, and 3. In regards to pull it, now what does this mean, pulling the building? Well, it means various terms. Now, there are people who are basically saying that, there is no such thing as pull it. Well, that's not really true. Pull it is used in various other terms regarding the implosion of the building, in regards to pulling a building with cables. Now, a video that I want to play for you is basically referring to the pulling of a building, literally pulling of a building. And so this is from a documentary in 2002 called How the Towers Fell. And basically, it's going to talk about the pulling of World Trade Center number 6. So here it is.
5 and 6 was rejected for fear workers would risk their lives entering buildings to set the charges.
Well, they've got the cables attached in 4 different locations going up, and they'll be pulling the building to the north. It's not every day you try to pull down an 8-story building with cables. I want everybody down to the gate. Thank you. I want to leave 50 feet past that blue truck.
I have $1 bet.
What?
You want to bet $1 that by 2:30 this will still be standing?
Yeah. Okay. I'll take that. I'll take that bet.
$1.
Okay.
There's a certain excitement in the air of bringing the last structure down at the World Trade Center.
It's a tough old building. Come on now.
This is gonna go quick.
Yeah. If it goes, it'll go quick. Keep her rocking, it'll go. We lost the floor. The more you shake it, the more it starts going into failure. There it goes. There it goes.
And so there you have it. That's one way of pulling a building. Now, there are other variations of pulling in regards to putting shape charges that will compromise beams of a building, in regards to bringing a building down in a certain way, whether to the north or south or left and right, east and west. And basically, that's how you can also implode a building. Now, when you look at World Trade Center 7, you basically look at the building itself. And if you didn't know what you were looking at, you would basically say, you know, heck, that definitely looks like a controlled demolition that you would see with Vegas casinos. And I lived in Las Vegas for 10 years, and I've seen my fair share of implosion of casinos. But there's something missing in regards to it. So I'm going to play a video, the best video, I think, of the collapse of World Trade Center 7 that I possess. And basically, here is the video I'm going to play. You can see that there's a number of fires on the floors. We can't see the back, but there's smoke coming everywhere, just about. This video was taken from a hotel just a couple of blocks from World Trade Center 7. Oh my God. There's your collapse. Well, what I'm trying to make a point here, you didn't see any explosions that you would see in a demolition. Now the windows were popping out. You didn't see flashing lights starting at the bottom. Remember, a demolition, implosion starts at the bottom. Collapse zone starts at the bottom, not from the top. So what about the fire department? Did they basically state that they heard a countdown or whatnot? Because that's another point that he makes. Jones claims he interviews members of the fire department and New York Police Department that heard a countdown. Well, that's the countdown I was talking about regarding the collapse of the building that was imminent. You read that in the transcripts. Now, did he play any audio from this? Did he play any video? No. So how do we know that there was a countdown? No, we don't know. Does it really exist? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But why don't we just read from, why don't we watch a video that was presented on NBC regarding Engine Company 15, which is a firehouse based in Manhattan, and talk to a firefighter named Miller. Let's see what he has to say.
How do you put out the fires left by the destruction and collapse of the Twin Towers? It seems an impossible task. You're now going to the base where the World Trade Center stood just hours after its collapse. It's where we found Engine Company number 15 and a firefighter who would only give us his last name, Firefighter Miller.
It's tough. It is beyond. You know, we can handle just about everything. This is beyond.
Yeah, it really is.
They were trying to put the fire out down there with towel at us, but
when it was on the 4th floor, we were trying to.
Well, we got all kinds of water problems. The two trade buildings took out the mains. There's no way to put the fire out. Well, they say 50,000 people work in each of those buildings.
Yeah.
And you know damn well whoever was over the top of the crash was stuck there. How are you going to get down?
There are a lot of people.
Miller realizes that 7 World Trade Center is next to fall.
See where the white smoke is? You see this thing leaning like this? It's definitely going to There's no way to stop it. Because you have to go up in there to put it out, and it's already, the structural integrity is not there in the building.
You see the fire coming up the terrace.
There you have it. So at no point did you hear any of the firemen read their transcripts, see in the video, talk about hearing explosions or putting bombs in the building to compromise and make the building collapse that Jones insinuates. Now, he talks about Barry Jennings, the mysterious death of Barry Jennings, and that he interviewed Barry Jennings. Well, the mystery isn't so much of a mystery. I mean, it only takes seconds to find out what happened to Barry Jennings, because he did die. I think it was the day before the publication of the NIST report. I think it was the NIST report, or the final 9/11 Commission report. Correct me in the comments if you're watching it. But here's his obituary, which is public, something that Jones claims that he did his due diligence. He heavily researched it. The bulletin regrets to report the passing of Deputy Director of the Emergency Services Department, Barry Jennings, on August 19, 2008. Now, according to his son on Facebook, Barry Jennings died of leukemia, and they actually moved. Now, Jones makes the claim that, maybe they're in the witness protection program because they were getting harassed about why Jennings, the mystery about Jennings, which I'm going to play in a bit. But Barry Jennings passed away due to leukemia. Now, that's not strange, because when you think about it, a lot of people died of cancer-related illnesses years later after the World Trade Centers had all collapsed. But according to Jones, he researches this stuff. But yet, this information is publicly available. And again, at the end, the Israelis. Now, at the end, I don't know what to tell you, why he implicates the Israelis with the collapse of World Trade Center 7. Like I said, he wants to insinuate that they did because they were somehow involved with the World Trade Center, with the 9/11 attacks. But he just doesn't know how to connect the dots. What Jones basically does is that he'll give you a little bit nuggets of factual information. And in between those nuggets is speculation or outright falsehoods. And this is very disingenuous. This is not actual honest reporting. And this is the reason why I'm a huge critic of Alex Jones, more so than most people. I liken him to CNN or Fox News. No different. He's not telling you the truth. He's not telling you the whole truth anyway, much like the media does. Now, how about the pros of the collapses of the World Trade Center 7 building? As I just gave the argument for the cons. Well, interestingly enough, we do have 2 people who were inside World Trade Center 7. And they basically gave us a report that basically is not known to many people. Now, to major conspiracy theorists or to the fringe, they know of one person, that's Barry Jennings, who is who works for the city housing department that we just mentioned. Well, let's hear what he had to say regarding while he was inside World Trade Center 7.
Barry Jennings, you were on the 8th floor. You work for the city housing department. Explain to me the moment of impact.
Well, me and Mr. Hesh, the corporation counsel, were on the 23rd floor. I told him we got to get out of here. We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor. And I turned to Hesh, I said, this is it, we're dead. We're not gonna make it out of here. I took a fire extinguisher and I bust the window out. That's when this gentleman here heard my cries for help. This gentleman right here, and he kept saying, stand by, somebody's coming to get you. They couldn't get to us for an hour because they couldn't find us.
You thought that was it?
I thought we're dead. I thought.
Okay, so remember what he said, that they were walking down the stairs, there was an explosion, brought us back up to the 8th floor, and he broke a window out. Now, he was with another gentleman, Michael Hess. Now, Michael Hess, who is also on the 8th floor, he was the gentleman next to Barry Jennings. And what did Michael Hess have to say in regards to what he saw while he was on the 8th floor with Barry Jennings at World Trade Center 7?
Frank Uciardo back on the phone with us, Brenda, with some New York City officials. Frank, go ahead.
That's right. I'm standing here right now just off Broadway by City Hall with Michael Hess, who is the city's corporation counsel. Mr. Hess, you were trapped in, I believe, 7 World Trade Center. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I was. I was up in the emergency management center on the 23rd floor, and when all the power went out in the building, another gentleman and I walked down to the 8th floor where there was an explosion, and we've been trapped on the 8th floor with smoke, thick smoke all around us for...
Mr. Hess! Watch out. Watch out. Mr. Hess! 5 words. I pass the word. I'll try and get word. I'll try and get word. 7 World Trade. I'm falling in. What floor?
That's Mr. Hess's corporation counsel.
What floor? What?
8th floor.
8th floor, 7 World Trade. 7. Okay. I'm falling in 8. We'll get you out of here.
Now, if that's not enough, the testimony of 2 men who were inside the building hearing an explosion, does it mean that a bomb went off? An incendiary device? Maybe a transformer? Could mean a lot of things, but I'm just going to keep that out there. An explosion that large enough to blow out the bottom floors where they couldn't escape, it's cause for concern. Now, there's a Dutch expert named Danny Joanko, who doesn't believe that World Trade Center 1 and 2 were demolitions. However, he does give a little bit of credence regarding World Trade Center 7. And this is the full unedited video that is what was made in 2006 regarding what he thinks about World Trade Center number 7.
Wat je ziet bij het World Trade Center. Dit zijn beelden van gebouw nummer 7.
Ja.
Ja, zullen we deze maar eens even pakken. Eens kijken wat we dan zien.
Zie je een brand van boven ergens?
Ik zie wel rook.
Ja, stof krijg je altijd. Er is niks van tevoren uitgehaald, hè? Zie je vanaf boven gaan? Nee, je gaat vanaf onder.
Die gaat vanaf onder, ja.
Toch?
Ja.
Ze hebben gewoon kolommen weggeblazen. Er is nagesprongen.
Dit valt anders dan het World Trade Center.
Vind je niet dan?
Ja, je ziet het, de onderste verdiepingen gaan eerst.
Ja, en de rest zakt er gewoon in. Dus dit is controlled demolition.
Zeker weten?
Zeker weten. Er is nagesprongen. Dit is in opdracht gebeurd. Dit heeft een team gedaan van experts.
Maar dit is ook op 11 september gebeurd.
Dezelfde dag?
Dezelfde dag.
Dezelfde dag? Weet je dat zeker?
Ja. Daar gaat hij weer.
Ik kan me herinneren dat ze zeiden dat er nagesprongen is, maar het heeft dagen gerookt. Er was al veel rook weg. Was het zeker weten de 11e? Dat kan geen waar zijn.
7 uur nadat de World Trade Center naar beneden viel.
Ja? Hebben ze hard gewerkt. Ik ken de constructie van het gebouw niet, maar dan hebben ze heel rigoureus, heel snel lading aangebracht. Ze hadden dan wel de mazzel, omdat er al zoveel verwoest was in de omgeving, dat je dan ook niet zo secuur hoeft te zijn. Hè? Je kunt je voorstellen als daar allemaal gebouwen rondstaan die gewoon intact zijn en intact moeten blijven. Met gevoelige computerapparatuur. Daar moet je heel precies van tevoren je verzwakkingen aanbrengen enzovoort enzovoorts.
Maar zo netjes hebben, ziet het er wel uit. Alsof ze het
ja,
echt heel netjes hebben gedaan.
Ja, oké, dat kan wel zo zijn. Alleen, ik doel dan meer op misschien inderdaad het plaatsen van pakketlading in plaats van al dat voorsnijbrandwerk en een lineaire snijlading toepassen. Hè? Dus, gewoon rigoureus, omdat het toch een zootje was.
Geen snijbrandwerk, maar gewoon alleen wat ladingen.
Gewoon ladingen er tegenaan en echt snel. De situatie was volledig vervuild in de omgeving.
Okay. Ja, nou even globaal dan. Stel dat u die opdracht zou krijgen. Kijk, dit is de plattegrond van dat gebouw. Hier zie je
van nummer 7.
Dat is nummer 7, ja. Dit zijn de dragende stalen kolommen.
Oh, dat zijn dan niet eens zoveel.
Nee, dat zijn er niet zoveel.
Dat verklaart heel veel.
Dat verklaart wat dan?
Dat het snel kan.
Dat kun je snel opblazen?
Dit kun je heel snel opblazen. Ja, want kijk, ik weet natuurlijk niet de hoogte van de vloeren. Laat me dat vooropstellen. Maar misschien dat ze in het midden wat meer verdieping hebben geplaatst. Maar in principe behoor je alleen maar per kolom. Je zou dit nog met snijbrander en snijladingen kunnen doen.
Maar welke kolommen moet je opblazen om het gebouw zo netjes te laten instorten als dat we nu net zagen?
Dit hard. Dit hard.
Dit hard.
Alhoewel,
dus
ik wil...
Deze 12 of zo.
Ja, alhoewel als ik wel een fotootje gezien heb op het internet vanaf boven gezien. En dan was het toch niet zo netjes hoor. Want dan stonden de Russen nog ergens aan de zijkant wanden zo van 13, 14 verdiepingen nog overeind.
Nee, het was heel netjes.
Nou, dat kan ik je laten zien op het internet. Ik zou niet meer direct weten wat het filmpje het was, maar het lag niet zo mooi op een hoopje, laat ik het zo zeggen. Kijk, van de 47 was die net ingekort.
Dit is het hoopje.
Nou ja, kijk eens. Dat bedoel ik. Dat is nog heel wat.
Maar je kunt er omheen lopen. Ziet u?
Ja, oké. Maar dit
is zo netjes dat je er omheen kunt lopen.
Maar dit staat nog.
Ja.
Dat bedoel ik. Je laat precies de foto zien die ik bedoelde.
Maar dit is een ander gebouw.
Is dat een ander gebouw?
Ja, dat is het gebouw daarnaast.
Dat hebben ze later dan ook gesloopt.
Nee.
Puin ligt er toch tegenaan, zouden ze zeggen.
Ja, maar dat gebouw nee, dat is bij mijn weten niet gesloopt.
En dit gebouw ook niet?
Ik weet niet zeker. Maar in ieder geval, dit is gebouw 7. Dit hoort daar niet bij. Dit is het Vierzongebouw, heet dat.
Even kijken, hoe moet ik het nou zien? Is het een ander gebouw?
Ja.
Tja, waren er maar meer foto's van.
Nou, er zijn ook wat luchtopnames van, maar overal zie je toch duidelijk dat alleen gebouw 7 keurig is ingestort met de buitenwanden naar binnen. Als een envelopje,
maar dat doe je om je begint hier met je eerste tijden en dan met je vertraging naar buiten toe, zodat die vloeren naar binnen knikken enzovoort. En een lading in een H-balk, laten we zeggen dat het een H-profielen zijn geweest. Je hebt maar twee gaten te branden. In het midden een snijladingje, 2 zo schuin en dat doe je beneden nog een keer. Je zet een druklading er tegen, een stuk hout en een druklading. En je sluit ze aan en boem, het is weg. Hè? Dat doen wij ook. Wij laten ook staalconstructies omduikelen of in elkaar storten.
Maar hoe lang zou u ermee bezig zijn om dit gebouw dan...
Nou, als je hier met voldoende mensen naartoe gaat en eentje geeft de streepjes aan wat de snijbrandjongen moet gaan doen. En snijlading er tegenaan met een stuk duct tape is no time werk. Een minuut per lading, nog niet. Een half minuut.
Nou, je moet natuurlijk alle leidingen en alle bedrading moet je aanbrengen.
Dat valt allemaal reuze mee. Dat iedereen kent zijn taak.
Met hoeveel man heeft u hoeveel tijd nodig om dat te doen?
Dat weet ik niet precies. Maar...
Maakt u een inschatting?
Ja, dan moet je wel ervaren mensen hebben. Maar als je een man of 30, 40 zou hebben. Kijk, een paar met de snijbrander. De rest brengt hem aan. Andere mensen sluiten dat deadcord met die boosters aan. Dat moet allemaal precies op hetzelfde moment gaan. En weer een derde die zet de elektronische systemen erop. En dan gaat hij.
So, there you have it. The pros and cons of what happened at World Trade Center 7. And in regards to Alex Jones and his inadequate reporting, this is exactly what I mean in regards to inadequate research, especially for one of the biggest events in human history, especially in the United States, the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. And I think it's unfortunate that Infowars still, to this day, misreports and slanders the names of people who have no affiliation in terms of crimes regarding what happened at World Trade Center 7. So hopefully this video was a bit educational for you, and I will see you in the next video.